If you're one of the millions of Americans paying off your student loans, the Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, may make paying those loans a little bit harder, or a lot harder. Now, documents from a preliminary Education Department budget obtained by the Washington Post reveals that President Trump plans to put a program called the Student Loan Forgiveness Program on the chopping block, which means done. We're going to get rid of it. Wonderful. Now, the program, which is also known as the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, was signed into law under the College Cost Reduction and Access Act of 2007. Now, it was signed into law by former President George W. Bush. Now, there are a couple of amendments that were added to this by President Barack Obama that actually made it a little bit easier for college graduates to be able to pay off their student loans. Now, one of those amendments allowed students to have the remainder of their federal education loans waived after 10 years of making payments. Now, so this program, obviously helpful to a lot of people, because it allows you to discharge some of this debt if you have made consistent payments. So you're on time, you make your payments, you're doing what you're supposed to do, and the government says, hey, you know what, you've been paying on this for long enough. We're going to let the rest of it go for being responsible, okay? Because we know this is a lot of money, and we have the ability to discharge the rest of your debt. So this change and cutting this program, well, this is going to be bad news for millions of Americans who are actually hoping to be able to make it to that 10-year mark to get that debt discharged. Now, according to the rough draft of the budget, Trump is planning to cut a total of $10.6 billion from different federal education initiatives. And the first program up for elimination would be the PSLF, according to the Washington Post. So, hey, this is the first thing that's going to go if he gets his cuts. Now, if the proposed budget cut is finalized, funding used by higher education institutions for work-study programs, public schools, use the money towards assisting students suffering from mental health issues while promoting advanced coursework will also be drastically cut short. So all these programs that were there to help people, work-study programs, mental health issues, advanced placement tests, all that, plus the PSLF, gone into this budget. Now where's the money supposed to go? So you're cutting all this money. What are they going to do with it? Okay, where's it going to go? Trump plans to divert a major portion of this reported savings from canceling PSLF towards one of the educational programs his administration has been pushing for since the start: for-profit charter schools. Education Secretary Betsy DeVos wholly endorses a program which looks to divert $400 million towards expanding charter schools and developing private and religious schools. So that's very important. You're taking public money and you're putting it to a religious school. But wait a minute. That's public tax money going to a religion. That seems to run afoul of the First Amendment, where you're supposed to keep a wall of separation between church and state. Why are we funding religious schools? How are we going to get away with that? That seems incredibly wrong. Okay. Now, she said, it's time for us to break out of the confines of the federal government's arcane approach to education. Washington has been in the driver's seat for over 50 years with very little to show for its efforts. So that's her statement on that earlier in May. Now, that's funny. She likes to blast, federal government's handling of schools, which I admit, far from perfect. So there are significant issues with education. I think the way that education is funded, number one, is a problem, but also the way that education is stressed. I believe that we are teaching to a 1950s sort of economy when it comes to school. Rote memorization, standardized testing, all that kind of bullcrap. We can change that. We do not stress critical thinking, because I think that the way the education system right now is designed and served, we discourage critical thinking because it's all about, okay, teach them to do everything that is asked of them. Basically, don't have independent thought. Don't challenge any authority. Don't challenge any system. Don't challenge any ideas. You do what you're told. And you write down what you're supposed to write down. And you do what we tell you to do. That is, again, that's suited to the 1950s workplace, which was nothing more than manufacturing and factory work. That is an outdated system, and we need to change away from that. We need to stress critical thinking skills. But my problems with the way the public school system is structured right now doesn't mean that I support charter schools. In fact, we've already tried charter schools. Now, if they actually had a measurable impact, if they were so much better than the public school system, well, then I would change my mind. However, unfortunately, that is not the case. In Michigan, charter schools, well, look, Betsy DeVos put all this money into charter schools and bought all these politicians to try to enact charter schools, and the results have been fairly bad. There was absolutely nothing to show for these efforts. They've actually been quite a disaster. Nearly half of all Michigan's charter schools rank in the bottom of U.S. schools. It's public school. And Michigan dropped from 28th to 41st in reading and from 27th to 42nd in math compared to other states. Disaster. That's abysmal. Look at how far we've dropped in education with these so-called charter schools. Public schools actually perform better. Children in public schools perform better than children in charter schools. It's not the children's fault. It's the education. They're not getting a good education, and the fact that there's no oversight is why. And then some of these schools, you just heard, religious schools, right? They can teach creationism, for fuck's sake. Literally. That is not education. When you have schools that aren't required to teach facts, then basically what you've done is that you've defeated the entire purpose of education. And you've basically turned them into indoctrination centers. Now, again, the right likes to throw that around all the time. Oh, the public school and indoctrination. Indoctrination into what? Facts? Reality? Knowledge? Yes, that's indoctrination. Only if you come at it from a view that, well, that I don't believe that people should know facts because, well, we don't believe in facts. We want you to believe what we believe so that you put us in power and we can enrich ourselves off you. That's what you believe. And if somebody comes in there and challenges that with actually facts and data and reality, well, that blows apart your entire narrative, and you hate that. So that's why they love to project that, oh, the liberal indoctrination. No, it's not liberal indoctrination. It's facts. Okay? Look, I'm not saying all charter schools are like that, by the way. But the ones backed by Betsy DeVos certainly are. Because, again, that goes back to her whole purpose. The whole point, the whole thing that she wanted to do, that she got into education to begin with, is that she wanted to put God back into schools. That's her whole point. Instead of teaching critical thinking skills and actual facts, she wants to indoctrinate people into Jesus. That's what this is about. And look, if you want to kill critical thinking, if you want to kill facts, well, part of that, again, with the charter schools, is making it so that public schools are starved of funding and that people who want their kids to have a good education, well, make it so that this isn't that you basically have the choice to, well, crappy unfunded education at public school, and, oh, look at that, I've got money so I can go to this charter school and hope that my child has a better education. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. The other thing is that you starve poor kids. Like, the only ones that will be able to go to those public schools are poor children because they couldn't afford to go, even with the vouchers, to these for-profit schools. So, and then you're going to have schools that, you know, have to close down because they don't have the funding to continue. We've seen that before. And a lot of people are going to be left without an ability to get an education. That's a great way to kill facts and critical thinking. Just make it unavailable for a vast majority of Americans. Now, the other thing, of course, is to make sure that people can't get those critical thinking skills later in life by being able to afford college. Now, they'll look at the astronomical costs, which are, again, astronomical. They look at those costs and they're like, boy, is it worth getting an education? Especially if we have no help in trying to pay that off. That giant amount of debt, well, you know what? Might as well not go to school in the first place. Again, you're killing critical thinking. Again, you're killing facts, right? So this is part of that. Look, we already have and this was in 2016, over 1 million borrowers default on their student loans that they can't afford, not being able to pay their student loans. Or, you know, we also have a problem with people who have all these student loans that are not in default, paying on these student loans, preventing them from, of course, being part of the economy. They can't buy houses, they can't buy cars, they can't buy consumer goods that help drive the economy. Because all they can do with their money, if they're making a minimum wage, and look, the fact that wages have stagnated over the last 30 years doesn't help the situation at all. What we're looking at is a generation, a lost generation, that has all the student loan debt that they're going to be servicing for 10, 20, 30 years. And the removal of this rule will make it hard, much more difficult for these people to actually be part of the economy. Because with this rule, you had at least a hope, if you were good at your payments, being able to pay this off in 10 years and get the rest of it waived. And that's still a lot of money that they're recouping that from the students, by the way. Now this is going to be, I mean, this is going to take that situation, it's going to make it worse. We do have a lost generation. Now, what we need to do to fix it is look, this isn't an easy fix, by the way. But making it easier for people to pay off their student loans definitely helps. Not only that, but making it so that people no longer have to take out so much money, or help universal college education, tuition free. That's taxpayer funded. That would also go a long way. The elimination of for-profit schools like Trump University, which is a great example of that, or some of the other for-profit colleges that take a lot of these loans. We need to have, instead of that, universal higher education, just like we have with K through 12. I think having college education or some sort of higher learning, like whether it be skilled trades and stuff that are paid, I think it's really, really important. I think it's actually necessary. What you don't do is slash funding for higher education as well as public schools. Because when you do that, that ends up doing a disservice to America, to society as a whole in the long run. That's the last thing that we need to do, is to eliminate access to education. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.